Hello students, welcome back to another video. Today we are continuing part 2 of the geography. We are continuing part 2 of the geography syllabus. We have been using our syllabus to prepare to get that grade 1 in the CXC geography exam. Alright, so if you have not yet seen part 1, go over to my channel and watch part 1. Alright, so we're going to continue to look at weather, climate, vegetation, and soil. We're going to differentiate between weather and climate. So in simple terms, weather is what is happening now in the sky. So right now or over a short period of time. Like if it's raining today, sunny tomorrow, or it might be cold this week, we refer to that as weather. Climate is a usual weather in a place over a long period of time. So if it's usually snow in winter every year in a particular place, that's the climate. All right. Caribbean weather systems, we're going to look at hurricanes, tropical waves, cold fronts, and anticlones, and the ITCZ. Now, the Caribbean usually has warm temperatures, a lot of sunshines, and a rainy season. Now, the weather is affected by wind, the sea, and weather systems like hurricanes and tropical waves. Now we're going to look at some of the weather systems. We don't want to make the video too long, so we're going to try and look at a few, not all the weather systems. So a hurricane is a strong spinning storm with heavy rain and very strong winds. It forms over warm ocean water and can cause flooding and damage. The hurricane season is from June to November. So if they ask you about Caribbean weather system, talk about hurricane. We have hurricanes from June to November. It's strong. It is formed over warm ocean water. All right. Another one that I can look at is tropical waves. Now, a tropical wave is a band of clouds and rain moving from Africa across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. It can bring heavy rain and sometimes grow into a storm or hurricane. All right, cold front. A cold front is cold air pushes warm air. So a cold front is when cold air pushes into warm air. It brings cooler temperatures, cloudiness, and sometimes rain. In the Caribbean, cold front usually comes from North America during the cooler months. So a cold front is when cold air pushes into warm air. It brings cooler temperature, cloudiness, and sometimes rain. And in the Caribbean, cold fronts usually come from North America during the colder months. All right, guys, so we're going to look at influence of relief on climate in the Caribbean. So how does relief just talking about the shape and height of the land, how does that affect the climate in the Caribbean? So we're going to look at mountains and rainfall. Now, when moist air from the sea moves inland and hits the mountain, it is forced to rise. So as the air rises, it cools and makes rain. This means the windward side, which is a side facing the wind of the mountain, gets a lot of rain. The leeward side, which is the other side stays drier because the air has already lost its moisture. So example, in Jamaica, the Blue Mountain gets a lot of rain on the windward side because the leeward side is much drier. Another way in which another influence of relief on climate is temperature and height. So higher places are usually cooler. So the far up you are in the hills, the cooler it is up there. For every 1,000 meters you go up a mountain, the temperature drops by about 6 degrees Celsius. Some mountains areas in the Caribbean are cooler than coastal areas. Another way in which the influence of relief affects climate in the Caribbean is shelter from the winds. So valleys and sheltered areas may be less windy and have more stable weather. So places hidden by hills or mountains may be warmer and drier. So the shape of the land, which is relief, affects rainfall, temperature, wind, which all make up the climate of a place. Now we're going to look at the components of an ecosystem: human, climate, vegetation, soil, living and non-living components. So an ecosystem is a place where living and non-living things work together to survive and grow. Now, living components, these are the things that are alive in the ecosystem. We have plants, animals, and microorganisms that are a part of the ecosystem. Now, non-living components are climate, soil, water, sunlight, and air. And these non-living components support life in the ecosystem. Now, another component of an ecosystem is humans. So humans are living components but have a big influence on the ecosystem. They can build, farm, cut down trees, or protect nature. Their actions can either harm or help the ecosystem. So in simple words, an ecosystem is like a team of living things and non-living things, all playing a part to keep life going. The simple explanation of the locations of the equatorial, tropical marine, and tropical continental regions. Now, the equatorial regions, they are found near the equator. For equatorial comes from the word equator, that's 0 degrees latitude. They include countries like Brazil, Congo, and Indonesia. At the equatorial region, it is usually hot and rainy all year with thick rain forests. Now, a tropical marine region, these are found in the Caribbean, Central America, and islands in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. These places are near the sea and have warm temperatures with wet and dry seasons. Example of tropical marine region would be Jamaica. We have a very tropical climate, Trinidad, Barbados, and the Bahamas. Tropical continental region found inland in parts of Africa, India, and northern South America. These areas are far from the sea and have very hot temperatures with a rainy season and a dry season. Examples where you can find tropical continental region would be parts of Nigeria, Sudan, and central India. So in summary, equatorial regions, they are located near the equator. They are hot and wet all year. Tropical marine, located near the sea. They are warm with rainy and dry seasons. Tropical continental regions, far from the sea, very hot with wet and dry seasons. All right, guys, so we are looking at climate, vegetation, and soil of the equatorial region, tropical marine region, and tropical continental regions. And the topic above, we did look at the location of these regions and the type of climate that we'll find here. All right, so let's look at equatorial region. Let's look at the climate. It's hot and wet all year round, heavy rain almost daily, and high humidity. Very little change in temperature throughout the year. Vegetation of an equatorial region: thick rainforests with tall trees and many plant types. Trees grow close together with big green leaves. Example would be a rubber tree. All right, so in an equatorial region, you will find a rubber tree. Soil in an equatorial region: poor and thin, even though the forest looks rich. Heavy rain washes away minerals. Most nutrients are in the plants, not the soil. In a tropical marine region, the climate is warm, temperatures all year. Two main seasons: you have a wet season and a dry season. It is affected by sea breeze and trade winds. Vegetation in a tropical marine region, grassland, shrubs, and scattered trees. In wet areas, more trees like palm and mango. You'll find more trees like palm and mango. In drier areas, we have grasslands or small bushes. The soil in a tropical marine region is richer than equatorial soil but varies by rainfall and can support farming with proper care. Tropical continental region climate. What do you think the climate is in this region? Very hot. Has a wet season and a long dry season. The dry season can last several months. Vegetation, mostly savanna, tall grasses with a few trees. Um, in very dry areas, you have thorny bushes and short grass. The soil in this area can be rich in minerals but may become hard and dry, needs rain or irrigation for good farming. Now, we're going to look at the relationship between the climate, vegetation, and soils of equatorial, tropical marine, and tropical continental regions. The relationship between climate, vegetation, and soil. Now, climate controls vegetation. The more rain, more plants. Less rain, we have grass and fewer trees. Vegetation affects soil. More plants protect the soil and add nutrients. Fewer plants lead to dry, dusty soil. Soil supports vegetation. What happens when we have good soil? When we have good soil, plants will grow. When we have poor soil, what will happen? We have limited plants. All right. So in short, equatorial in an equatorial region, it's very wet climate, dense forest, poor soil. Tropical marine region, warm with wet and dry seasons, mixed vegetation, moderate soil. Tropical continental region, hot with long dry season, savanna vegetation, dry soil. Alright, so if you have a textbook, you can look at the topic of weather, climate, vegetation, and soil, and then you can follow what I am saying in your textbooks. All right, so we're going to look at human systems, explain the factors influencing distribution of population and population density in a named Caribbean country. So if you decide to look at population, we're going to go through that revision now. So what are the factors influencing population distribution and population density in a named Caribbean country? And we're going to also look at the factors affecting population growth in one Caribbean country and in one developed country. So what is population distribution? So if you're going to attempt any question on the geography paper on population, you have to know what is population distribution. Now, this refers to where people live in a country. Population density, this means how many people live in a certain area per kilometer square. Now, what are the factors influencing population distribution and density in a named Caribbean country? And I'm going to look at Jamaica. Now, some of the factors that influence population distribution, which is where people live in the country, and population density, which is how many people live in a particular area per square kilometer or per kilometer square. The first factor is relief. As we established before in previous video, relief refers to the land shape and height. So if you live in flat coastal areas like Kingston or Montego Bay or Ocho Rios, those areas have high population because it's easier to build roads, houses, and businesses in that area. If you live in mountainous areas like the Blue Mountains, do you think we'll have more people living in the Blue Mountains area or less people? Yes. So we'll have fewer people living in mountainous areas because it's hard to build and farm there. And sometimes it's hard to build roads in those areas. It's all hard for electricity companies to go in those areas and, ensure that residents have electricity. So, another factor influence population distribution and density in Jamaica, apart from relief, is climate. Now, people prefer to live in areas that are moderate and comfortable, have moderate and comfortable climate, right? You don't want to live in an area where it's always cold or it's always hot or it snows all year. No, you don't want to live in those areas. You want to ensure that you are living in an area with a tropical climate. Sometimes it's rainy, sometimes it's dry. All right. Another factor that influence population distribution and population density is soil and farming. So let's look at a fertile area that has fertile soil, like the plains of St. Elizabeth and Clarendon. Do you think those areas would have more people or less people living there? Well, if your answer is those areas will attract more people, you are correct. Why is that so? Because they support agriculture. So if you have areas that are very fertile, you'll be able to engage in agricultural production of crops. All right. What do you think will happen in areas where we have poor soil or rocky land? Very correct. Those areas will discourage people from living there. No one wants to live in a place where it's rocky and you have poor soil. If you're into agriculture, you'll not be able to plant anything. If you like having flowers in your yard, you will not be able to plant flowers because the soil is poor and the land is rocky. All right, another factor that influences population distribution and population density is jobs and economic activities. So places with more jobs like Kingston or Montego Bay for tourism, most of the business places are in Kingston. Those places will have more people living there. Areas with fewer job opportunities, less business places, will have less people living there. So they will be less populated. All right. So the other factors, guys, there are other factors that you can look at. I am just going to look at four for the sake of the video. Factors affecting population growth in one Caribbean country and in one developed country. All right, so we're at number two, factors affecting population growth in one Caribbean country. And again, I'm going to look at Jamaica. All right, so population growth means the increase in the number of people in a country. What are the factors that cause the population in a country? And I said before, we're going to look at Jamaica to increase. Now, factors affecting population growth in Jamaica are, and in most Caribbean countries, birth rate. Many families still have children, but birth rates are slowly decreasing. Another factor affecting population growth, death rates. So better health care has reduced deaths, especially in babies and children. Then we have more people going to the gym and exercising, more people eating healthy, so the death rate is going down. Migration. Many Jamaicans, they are moving abroad for work, which slows population growth. Another factor that affects population growth, education. More people are learning about family planning, leading to smaller families. All right, and there are other factors that you can think about. All right, guys. Now we're going to look at factors affecting population growth in one developed country, and I'm going to look at the United States. Now, what are the factors affecting population growth in the US? Immigration. Many people move to the US for better jobs and safety, which definitely increases their population. Another factor that affects population growth in the US, low birth rate. Families often have fewer children. Another factor affecting population growth in the US is longer life expectancy. People are living longer because of good health care, going to the gym, etc. Another factor that you could look at is education. Many women delay having children to focus on their careers. What is urbanization? Urbanization is the movement of people from rural areas to urban areas. Population growth of one Caribbean capital city within the last 20 years. We're also going to look at the benefits and problems of urbanization in capital city in Objective 5. Objective 5's there. So whatever capital city we're going to look at, we're going to look at the same one in 6. All right, so let's go. All right, so the capital city that I will be looking at is Kingston, Jamaica. Now, the population growth in the last 20 years. So over the past 20 years, Kingston population has grown slowly. Some people move to urban areas like Kingston from rural parts of Jamaica, looking for better jobs, education, and health care. However, many Jamaicans have also migrated abroad, which slowed down the growth. The Greater Kingston area, including St. Andrew and Portmore, has seen more growth than the city centre itself. Now, what are the benefits of urbanization? What are the benefits and problems of urbanization in capital city? Objective 5. So we're going to look at Kingston. Continue to look at Kingston. Now let us look at the benefits of urbanization first. As we established before, urbanization is when people move from rural to urban areas. Now, what are the benefits of doing that? Moving from rural area, which is also called the country area, to an urban area, which is called the town area, there are more job opportunities. If you have ever been to the town in your country, you'll find a lot of businesses there, the government offices, tourism centers. They are all there in the urban area. So moving from rural to urban area, you are better able to find more job opportunities. Another benefit of urbanization is better access to services. Example, schools, hospitals, banks, and shops. So when you live in the rural area, the country area, most of the major hospitals, the universities, the shops, the banks, they are in the town area, which is the urban area. All right, so you have better access to services when you move to an urban area. Another benefit is improved infrastructure. When you go to the urban area, you're going to see better roads because the businesses are located in the urban area. Economic activities such as tourism are in the urban area. So you're definitely going to find better roads, public transportation, and communications that are more developed. Let's look at the problems of urbanization in Kingston. So some of the problems we have when we have too many people migrating from the rural area to the urban area are overpopulation. So we have too many people in small spaces leading to crowded housing and squatter land settlement. Another problem of urbanization is traffic congestion. So because we have people moving from the rural area to the urban areas, you're going to find that the roads are often congested, full, and cause a lot of delays, and it also cause pollution. Another problem of urbanization is poor housing conditions. So some people they have to live in squatter houses or squatter lands because moving from the country area to the urban area, sometimes they do not have any family members, they do not have the money to afford to rent an apartment or to rent a house, so they end up farming squatter land areas. Another problem would be crime and violence. A lot of people moving from the country area, which is the rural area, to the urban area, you will have crime and violence being increased. Sometimes they move to the urban area, they have not yet found a job. So employment, because of high unemployment, since they have not found a job as yet, and poverty, this can lead to criminal activities. All right. Now, what are the ways of controlling urbanization in the Caribbean? So, what are the ways that we can prevent too many people from moving from the country area, which is a rural area, to the town area, which is the urban area? Now, the first thing we can do is to develop the rural areas. Develop rural areas. Improve the schools in the rural areas. Improve the health care, the roads, the jobs, so that people don't feel the need to leave the countryside or to leave the rural area to an urban area. Another thing we can do is to create new towns. So build small planned towns or housing for people in the rural area to spread out the population. Another thing we can do is to improve public transportation in rural areas. Make it easier for people to live outside the city and still travel for work. Another way to control urbanization is to promote family planning, help people make informed decisions about family sizes. All right? Support farming, support fishing, and small businesses in rural areas. All right, guys. So now we're going to look at patterns and consequences of international migration in one named Caribbean country within the last 20 years. All right, guys. So we are going to look at pattern and consequences of international migration in Trinidad and Tobago. All right, so we're going to choose a different Caribbean country apart from Jamaica in the last 20 years. So many people from Trinidad and Tobago have migrated to countries like the United States, Canada, and the UK. Now, migration increased during the economic hardships, especially in the 1980s and early 2000s in Trinidad and Tobago. Skilled workers, teachers, nurses, and engineers, they often leave the country in search of better pay and better job opportunities. Now, what are the consequences of migration, international migration in Trinidad and Tobago? Let's look at the positive. So, when we're going to look at the consequences of international migration, we're going to look at the positive and the negative consequences. Now, the positive effects are remittances. So, when families migrate internationally from Trinidad and Tobago, they send money back home to their families, which help with buying food, help with education and housing. So it kind of improve the standard of living for their families back home. It lower unemployment. So what happen? People are migrating, so you have fewer people competing for jobs in Trinidad and Tobago. Exposure to new skills. So when migrants gain experience in an international country, they might return to help their country develop in a particular economic activity. The negative effects of international migration on Trinidad and Tobago includes brain drain, which is the loss of skilled workers. So you have a lot of skilled workers like teachers, doctors, engineers migrating, and this hurts the sectors like healthcare and education. Another negative effect of international migration is that families are separated. Children and parents may live apart for many years, all right? Another negative effect is aging population. So when you have young people migrating internationally from Trinidad and Tobago, they leave behind a more elderly population. All right, so we are at economic activities, and we're going to look at the characteristics and relative importance of primary, secondary, and tertiary economic activities to the Caribbean. Now, economic activities can be grouped into three sectors. We have the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. Now, what is a primary economic activities? Now, primary has to do with creating resources from nature. Example of some jobs that create resources are farming, fishing, mining, and forestry. Now, what are the characteristics of primary economic activities? They are mostly done in rural areas and they depend on land, water, and natural resources. So the farmer, they have to depend on the land. The fisherman, they depend on the water. All right. What are the importance of primary economic activities? They provide food and raw materials, employ many people, especially in farming and fishing, and they are important for export. Example, the farmers who plant bananas or sugarcane, they are involved in the export of these crops. Now, what do we mean by secondary economic activities? These include making products from raw materials. So when the farmers produce the raw materials, secondary economic activities, they make products from those raw materials that are provided. Example, manufacturing, construction, oil refining, food processing. Now, characteristics of secondary economic activities include it takes place in factories and industrial areas, those are the places where they're going to convert the raw material into something. They need energy machines and skilled workers. Secondary educational activities, they add values to raw materials, they create jobs and earn monies from export. So example, farmers who produces tomato, when it goes into the secondary economic activity, these are the factories now that they're going to create a byproduct from tomato, whether they're going to have tomato ketchup or some tomato sauce or something. Now, tertiary economic activities, they provide services to people and businesses. The tertiary economic activities, they provide service to people and businesses. Example, tourism, banking. When you go to the bank tell us they are providing a service to you. Transportation, when you call a Uber driver or a Lyft driver, or you take the bus to school, they are providing a service to you. Education, teachers, they are providing a service. When you go to the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, they are providing a service to you. Now, characteristics of tertiary economic activities, they are mostly found in towns and cities. They depend on skilled workers and good communication. Most growing sectors in the Caribbean. So the tertiary economic activity is the most growing sector in the Caribbean. Tourism brings in a lot of foreign money and it supports the entire economy and creates many jobs. All right, so we're going to look at location of one example, one example of each of the following economic activities. And we did this already, but we're just following the syllabus. We're going to look at one example of primary. So if on the syllabus they ask you to, list one example of primary economic activity, you're going to refer to fishing, forestry, or mining. If they ask about one secondary activity, you can talk about garment industry, food processing, any manufacturing industry. If they ask you to list one example of tertiary industry, you could talk about tourism, education, health, banking, etc. Now, what are the factors influencing the location of economic activities? And if you're answering a question like this in the exam, you're going to look at the physical factors, human factors, and economic factors. Now we're going to start by looking at the physical factors that influences the location of economic activities. And the first physical factor that we're going to look at is climate. Now, certain crops or tourism activities need specific weather. Example, warm climate for beach tourism. Tourists, they're not going to come to a country where the climate is cold, always cold. All right, so if you have a tropical climate or a warm climate, tourists will definitely visit those areas. All right, another physical factor that we can look at is soil. So fertile soil supports farming, example, sugarcane or bananas. We can also we're going to look at location as a physical factor when choosing economic activities. So coastal areas attract ports and tourism. Central areas may be good for farming. Now, human factors. Once you see human factors, you know that you're going to talk about people and their skills and abilities and talents. Now, population. Economic activities often locate near where people live to find workers and customers. Another human factor that you could talk about is skilled labor. Some businesses, they need trained workers, example in hospitals and IT companies. Another factor that influence the location of economic activity, education and training, good schools and training centers, they support skilled jobs. Now, what are the economic factors that influence the location of economic activities? Now, transportation and communication. And guys, please remember, once you are writing about economic factors, you have to think about money, market, and business opportunities. Now, transportation and communication is one of the economic factors. So when you have good roads, ports, and internet, this makes business easier. Another economic factor is access to markets. Businesses located where they can sell goods or services easily definitely is a factor. All right, capital. When we talk about capital, we are looking at money. Areas with banks or investors attract businesses. Government support as another economic factor. Zones with tax breaks or development help attract factories or tourism. Now, what are the challenges in each economic activity? And if you're going to write about the challenges in economic activities, you have to look at globalization, technology, marketing, for example, Caribbean single market and the economy. And we could also look at the European Union and sustainability. Now, please remember when they are talking about economic activities, they are talking about primary, secondary, and tertiary economic activities. All right, so we're going to look at the challenges in each economic activity. Now, challenges in each economic activity, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, we're going to start looking at the primary economic activities, example, farming, fishing, mining, and the challenges that they face. Climate change, storms, droughts, flooding, these damage crops and reduce harvest. Another challenge that they face in the primary industries, soil erosion and land degradation. Overuse of land make it hard to farm. Another challenge that they may face, overfishing, the fishermen, so they may face overfishing, which reduces fish stocks and affects their income. Another problem could be globalization, cheaper imported foods. So people are importing cheaper food that will reduce the demand for local products because you're going to buy the food that are imported because it is cheaper. Technology. Small farmers can't afford modern machines or irrigation system. Marketing, poor packaging, transportation, and lack of global brand recognition hurt sales. Now, trade agreement, the Caribbean single market and economy helps regional trade, but Caribbean goods face tough competition in European Union and other global markets. Now, what are the secondary economic activities? Example, manufacturing and refining. Now, what are the challenges in secondary economic activities? High energy costs, because you're converting raw material from the primary industry into a byproduct. So running factories in small islands is very expensive. lack of raw materials. Many countries must import what they need to make products. Skill labor shortage, not enough trained workers. Competition, global goods. So they are competing against goods from China, India, etc., which are usually cheaper than local goods. And then you can talk about small markets. Local demand is low and export face high competition. Now, tertiary economic activities. What are some of the challenges in that industry? Global pandemics like COVID-19, which badly hurt the tourism sector. Competition from other tourism areas like in Mexico or Florida. Another challenge of tertiary economic activity, service quality, needs improvement in some areas. Technology, some businesses are slow to go digital. Marketing, not enough international promotion of Caribbean products and services. Now we're going to look at the secondary, for the secondary industry chosen in 10, compare and name Caribbean country with a newly industrialized island, either Hong Kong or Singapore. We're going to look at the comparison of a secondary industry in a Caribbean country versus a new industrialized country. So the Caribbean country we're going to look at is Trinidad and Tobago. All right, so industry focus, we're going to look at oil refining, natural gas, and food processing. Strengths, rich in oil and gas, good infrastructure in port, leases, industrial estate. Challenges, dependent on oil prices, need to diversify. Now, when we compare that to Singapore, let's look at the industry. We're going to focus on electronic, biotechnology, and shipbuilding. Strengths, highly educated workforce, strong trade policies, advanced technology, global financial hub. Challenges, limited space, high cost of living. So we're going to compare factors. When you look at the factors, resources, Trinidad and Tobago, they have natural gas. Singapore, they have few natural resources. When it comes on to industrial type, and Trinidad and Tobago, they have energy based. Singapore, they have high tech and financial electronics. Global competition, Trinidad and Tobago medium, Singapore very high. Workforce in Trinidad and Tobago, they are developing. Singapore, they have a high skilled workforce. Trinidad and Tobago, they export oil and gas. Singapore, they export electronics and pharmaceuticals. Importance of agriculture to the Caribbean: provides jobs, earns foreign exchange, support industries, boost tourism. Social importance: agriculture feeds the population, maintains rural life, cultural value. Environmental importance of agriculture: can protect land, so good farming practices protect soil and forests, and it encourages sustainability if done with care. All right, so we're going to look at locations of commercial, arable, and pleasant farming in one Caribbean country. We're going to look at commercial arable farming in Jamaica. Now, farming is done on flat, fertile lands, such as in St. Catherine Plains, Clarendon, and St. Elizabeth. Grown crops that are grown in Jamaica: sugarcane, bananas, and vegetables for export and local supermarkets, often done by large farmers or companies. Peasant farming in Jamaica, commonly in hilly or mountainous areas like Manchester. Small family farms grow food like yam, cassava, plantain, and vegetables, mainly for local use or markets. Characteristics of commercial arable and pleasant farming in Jamaica. So commercial arable, the characteristics are: these are large-scale farms with many workers, grow crops for export and business profit. They use modern equipment like tractors and irrigation system, often owned by private companies or large landowners. Commercial arables are usually found on flat, fertile lands and are connected to processing factories and international markets. Peasant farming characteristics: small farms run by families or individuals, crops mainly for home use or local sale, limited use of machines, found on slopes or hillsides where land is cheaper or more available, may include mixed farming, example growing crops and raising animals together. Now we're going to look at location of commercial herbal farming in the Pirate province of Canada. Now, commercial herbal farming is mainly located in the southern part of these provinces. These are areas known as Canada's breadbasket because they grow large amount of wheat, canola, barley, and corn. The land is flat, the soil is fertile, and there is sufficient rainfall for immigration. Now, what are the characteristics of commercial herbal farming? In Canada, it's done on large-scale farm. They have mechanized farming, so they use tractors, harvesters, and irrigation systems. They grow grains and other oil seeds. They depend heavily on technology and weather data. Farms are often family-run businesses, but some are owned by corporations. Highly productive is a key part of Canada's agricultural export. And guys, please remember you can use your textbook to do further reading on these topics. I'm trying to cover as much topic as possible because the geography syllabus is very long. All right, so do some extra reading, guys. Now we're going to look at human environment systems, and we're going to start off with definition of natural hazard. What are natural hazards? Natural hazards are dangerous events caused by nature that can harm people, damage property, and affect the environment. Example, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, floods, and droughts. What are the impact of a natural hazard? So we're going to look at hurricane in the Caribbean. So the impact of one of the following on life and property. So we're going to look at hurricane. So impact on life and property. When there's a hurricane, we have lives being lost, homes are destroyed, roads and bridges are damaged, power and water supplies are cut off, farms and businesses are ruined. Response to one hazard in a Caribbean country. All right, so we're going to still look at hurricanes. So whenever there's a hurricane, government shelters are open to house people. Food and water are distributed with help from aid groups. Rescue teams search for trapped or injured people. Foreign aid from countries and agencies provided relief supports. Rebuilding programs starts to repair homes and infrastructure. Individual responses to hazards. So you can board up your windows, you can store food, water, and medicine, stay informed through radio or mobile alerts, move into shelters when warned. You could also help neighbors, especially the elderly and children. How do we prepare for natural disasters? Creating disaster plans at home and school, keeping emergency kits, knowing evacuation routes, practicing drills for earthquakes or hurricanes, building stronger homes in safer locations. Community involvement when there's a natural disaster, neighborhood watch groups helps during emergencies, churches, and schools become shelters and aid centers. Volunteers help with cleanup and distribution of relief. Community meetings share safety tips and updates. Natural disaster organizations, we have the ODPEM in Jamaica, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. They coordinate emergency plans and responses, issue warnings and safety alerts, provides education and training to schools and communities, work with other government agencies to save lives. We also have regional organizations such as the Caribbean oh, such as the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. They help Caribbean countries before, during, and after disasters, sends regional teams and resources to areas in need, provides training and disaster planning support, shares information, and coordinates international help. Now we are down to pollution. Definition of pollution. Pollution is the introduction of any foreign substance into the atmosphere, water, or on land. Now the types of pollution: air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, noise pollution. Now air pollution from cars, factories, burning waste; water pollution caused by waste dumped into rivers, seas, or leaks from oil and chemicals; land pollution, littering, illegal dumping, plastic waste; noise pollution caused from traffic, loud music, construction. Now we're going to look at location of area in a named Caribbean country where pollution is a major problem, and I chose to look at Jamaica, Kingston Harbor, one of the most polluted coastal areas in the Caribbean. Pollution from factories, sewage, ships, and garbage hurts fish life, seaweed, and mangroves. It affects the health and tourism if not controlled. Now, what do we mean by global warming? Long-term changes in global temperatures and causes of global warming. Definition of global warming. This is a gradual increase in Earth's temperature caused by human activities, especially the burning of fossil fluids like oil, gas, and coal. These release greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide that trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere. Long-term changes in global temperatures. Over the past 100 years, global temperatures have risen steadily. The last few decades have been the hottest on record. Scientists expect temperatures to keep rising unless we take serious action to curtail global warming. Causes of global warming: burning fossil fuels from factories and cars; deforestation, cutting down forests, reduces the Earth's ability to absorb CO2. Industrial activities release greenhouse gases into the air; agriculture, livestock, and rice farming release methane gas; waste, rotting garbage in landfills releases greenhouse gases. Consequences of global warming. So climate change, changes in rainfall, we have more heat waves and stronger hurricanes. So sea level rise in the Caribbean, example in Bahamas, we have melting ice caps, warming seas cause ocean levels to rise. Low-lying islands in the Bahamas are at risk of flooding and erosion. Salt water can ruin farmland and drinking water supplies. Measures to reduce the impact of global warming in the Caribbean and globally: forest conservation, protect trees that absorb carbon dioxide, use renewable energy like solar, wind, and hydropower instead of oil or gas, educate people about saving energy and recycling, coastal protection, build seawalls or restore mangroves to stop erosion. In a developed country, we're going to look at Germany. Laws to reduce vehicle emissions, so electric cars, the public transport, fuel efficiency energies. They invest in renewable energy like solar and wind power. In Germany, recycling and energy saving programs helps to reduce waste and pollution. Causes of coral reefs. The syllabus says sedimentation, sewage pollution, and tourism. Now, sedimentation, the soil washes into the sea from farming or construction covering reefs. Sewage pollution, dirty water causes algae to grow, which blocks sunlight from coral. Tourism, careless diving and boat anchors damages reefs. Climate change, warmer seas cause coral bleaching. Overfishing upset the reef's natural balance. Consequences of coral reef destruction, coastal erosion. So without reefs, waves wash away beaches and damage coasts. Declining fish stock, many fish depends on coral reefs for food and shelter. Loss of tourism, damaged reefs mean fewer tourists and less income. Loss of biodiversity, reefs are home to many sea creatures that may disappear. Measures to reduce coral reefs damage, and we're going to look at Belize. Marine, so they have introduced marine protected areas. Fishing and tourism are limited to help reefs recover. They have laws against pollution and overfishing. Education programs in Belize, they teach locals and tourists how to treat the reef responsible. Sustainable tourism, eco-friendly hotels and tour companies, coral farming and restoration. So they are planting new corals to grow damaged reefs in Belize. All right, guys, so we're going to stop there for today. And I hope you have learned something from the syllabus, from the geography syllabus, the CXC geography syllabus. Guys, all the best in your examination. Please remember that the questions from your exam paper, they are from the syllabus. So once you know the different topics on the syllabus and what to study, you will be okay. Guys, please remember to like, share, and subscribe and leave a comment. And this is part 2 of the geography syllabus. If you have not yet seen part 1, please go to my channel and watch part 1. See you in another video.